G'day folks, if you're brand new to GoPro and you're wondering what the difference is between filming a time-warp video and a time-lapse video, we're going to discuss the differences between the two, what they are, and what they're best used for. So let's just jump right in and take a closer look. Now, when I make these types of videos, I usually go by questions that get asked on my YouTube channel. And that's one question that has been asked quite a bit over the last year or so. Time Warp was first introduced with the Hero 7 Black. Last year with the Hero 8 Black, we've seen version 2. And now with the Hero 9 Black, we have version 3. Now, a Time Warp video is basically just a fancy term for a hyperlapse. Basically, the difference between a Time Warp video and a traditional time lapse. In a time lapse, the camera's in a fixed position and the subject matter is moving. For example, you might be filming a busy intersection with traffic and people walking by, maybe a sunset, or perhaps even just clouds moving across the sky. In those situations, you mount your camera in a fixed point. In a time warp video, it's kind of the opposite. Usually the subject matter isn't moving, but the camera is. Now, of course, there are always variations. Sometimes in a time lapse, your camera will be on a slider and it will be moving. And vice versa when you're filming a time warp. Sometimes the camera's moving, but the subject matter is moving as well. In the past, it was very difficult to create a hyperlapse on a GoPro because it meant mounting your GoPro on something like a tripod, taking a photo, moving it a little bit, taking another photo, and so on. But when GoPro introduced the TimeWarp feature, it's now quite easy to capture one. Now, I'm just going to show you a quick example here. In the past, when you wanted to create a hyperlapse, you would have to use the time-lapse mode on a GoPro, and the results weren't very good. If you take a quick look at this example, you can see I'm just going for a walk with the GoPro. I have it filming in a 1-second interval in time-lapse mode. You can see the video is quite shaky, and really it's unusable. It's not really any kind of content that you would want to use for anything. And that's because the camera is moving and it's not being aligned properly. Now, on the other hand here, you can see I am now filming a hyperlapse, and you can see that everything is nice and smooth. There's a little bit of jitter, but generally it looks really good. So in that situation, if you're moving with your GoPro, you want to use the TimeWarp feature. Now, if we go into the settings of a hyperlapse, you can see there's quite a few settings we can change. The main setting you're going to want to adjust is the speed. You can see there right now it's at 30 times, but if we click on that button there, we have the option of 30 times, 15 times, 10 times, 5 times, 2 times, and auto. Quite often, leaving it in auto is your best choice. The camera's going to decide what looks best. And of course, there's many other settings you can go in there and play with. If you want to get more advanced, you can go in and set your Pro Tune settings as well. Now, another good question I do get asked from time to time is when filming a drive lapse, do you film in time warp mode or do you film in time lapse mode? And if you're not quite sure what a drive lapse is, basically it's just mounting your camera to your car or motorcycle and going for a drive. You can create some really interesting footage that way. Really, at the end of the day, you can film in either mode. Both will produce pretty good results. If you do film in time warp mode, the finished video will be a little bit smoother, but not by much. The differences will be quite minimal. However, with that said, you do have some extra settings that you have available when in time-lapse mode that just aren't available in time warp mode, and those could be important for some people. Let's just take a quick look at a comparison here of a drive lapse filmed in time-lapse mode and one filmed in time warp mode. Now, after playing back that drive lapse, you probably noticed the time warp was a little bit smoother. Now, there was nothing wrong with the time lapse. It looked pretty good as well. Now, I did mention that you do have some extra settings when filming in time lapse that aren't available in time warp. Now, one of the settings we can change when filming a time lapse is the format. Right now, you can see it's set to video, but we can click on that and change the output to photos. Now there's a couple reasons why you would want to output it as a series of photos instead of a video. First of all, you can bring it into a program like Lightroom and edit it to a specific look. Now another reason is once you have the image series edited, you can take them into programs like Time-Lapse, and you have a lot more control of how the final output looks. You can add different effects like frame blending, and it's also a good way to get rid of flickering in the time-lapse. Now another benefit to shooting in time-lapse mode over hyperlapse mode is we have the option to turn the bitrate to high. By default it's going to be on standard, but you can bump it up to high to get a better quality video. You're not able to do that in a time warp, so the outputted video of a time lapse will be a little bit higher. And lastly, we do have a little bit more control over the interval. If we click on interval there, you can see we have quite a few options. We can go right from half a second all the way up to 60 minutes. In time warp mode, we don't have quite as many options. And of course, like I already shown you earlier on, the way you set timing is a little bit different. Now, just before I go here, I just want to show you a couple features of time warp. Maybe you're not quite aware of this if you're brand new to GoPro. When filming a time warp and you're moving with the camera, at any given time, you can go back to real time. Now, this year with TimeWarp 3.0, they've given you the extra feature of adding audio as well. Let's go ahead and I'm going to start recording. You can see that I'm in time warp mode. When I hit the record button, we could go ahead now and film what we are going to film. But you can see here we have this button at the bottom that says start real speed. So as you're walking along, if you come across something that's really interesting, maybe you're doing some sightseeing and you come across a landmark, you can hit the start real time. And on top of that, it's also going to record audio. So if you want to do a bit of commentary, you can do so. When you want to go back to regular hyperlapse mode, you just hit stop real time. Now another thing you can do while filming your time warp is go to half speed. Now this only works if you're filming in 1080. If you're filming in 4K, this option isn't available. You can see we have this other button over here at the right hand side. If we click on it, you can see this has changed to half speed there. So now when we click on that button, it's going to go in and film things a little bit slower. So that really gives you that nice speed ramping effect. And again, when we're done, we just hit stop. So when you're done recording, that real-time video that you've captured will be seamlessly blended into your time warp video. I'll just show you a quick example here of filming a time warp video and then going into real speed. Well folks, that's basically it for my video. Hopefully if you had any questions about time warp and time-lapse video, this answered all your questions. If you still have questions, don't forget you can always ask me down below in the comment section. I try to answer comments the best I can depending on time. If it's a question that I don't know, hopefully somebody else within the community can answer it for you. I want to thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.